Yesterday, we set out to co-opt and overshadow the first day of Pride Month. And although it didn't happen exactly as I anticipated or planned, I would say that we still succeeded. So to quickly review what we discussed on the show yesterday, here's the Daily Wire. We decided that we would celebrate the one-year anniversary of our film, What is a Woman, and ring in Pride Month 2023 by releasing the film free for everybody on Twitter. And we presented this idea to Twitter several weeks ago. They were excited about it at first. They offered us the chance to buy a special event page for the film, which would have all kinds of great extra features, and it would also ensure a wide reach for the film. But then only a few days before our streaming event, Twitter changed its tune dramatically. They told us that they decided that the film is hate speech and that it violates its policies against misgendering, quote unquote, policies that they removed from their written terms of service months ago, but which they now say still exist, but in, I guess, invisible ink. And they told us that we could not have our event page. And not only that, but if we posted the film on our own page, they would tag it as hateful conduct and disable sharing on the film and make sure that nobody sees it in their feeds. They told us that our only way around this, the only way to post the film and not have its reach totally crushed, would be if we censored it ahead of time by removing certain scenes that Twitter found especially offensive. And we, of course, refused that offer and instead resolved to post the movie anyway and to have this fight with them in public. I mean, if that's what they wanted, that's what they would get, and they got it. And that recaps everything we covered on the show yesterday. Things were left on a bit of a cliffhanger. It wasn't clear what would happen when we posted the movie, if Twitter would actually make good on its threats to tag it as hate speech and censor it. What, if anything, would Elon Musk do to step in and enforce his free speech promises? We didn't know any of the answers to those questions. We were headed for a standoff, and we weren't sure what the result would be. Well, shortly after 8 Eastern time last night, we found out. We published the film, as promised, in its entirety, uncensored, on the Daily Wire Twitter page. And for exactly 2 minutes, everything went well. In fact, there was so much interest around the film that in just 2 minutes, 3,500 people shared it in 2 minutes. But then the speech suppressors moved in, making good on their threat to suppress it. 2 minutes after it was posted, Twitter slapped the hateful conduct label on it, disabled retweets, disabled comments, and removed and blocked it from everybody's feed. So if you tried to retweet it, you would get a message from Twitter saying that the content cannot be shared because it interferes with, quote, healthy conversations. And if that was not enough censorship, the phrase, what is a woman, was blacklisted from the trending list and removed every time it appeared there. And Twitter's actually been doing that for the past year, ever since the movie originally released. They've blacklisted the film from trending, and they kept up that policy yesterday. Now, at this point, Elon Musk started to speak publicly about the issue, though his initial statements were somewhat unclear, somewhat ambiguous. Earlier in the day, he had said that the decision to censor the movie was a mistake made by many people at Twitter and that it actually doesn't violate any of their policies. Yet, in spite of those statements, it was restricted and censored anyway. In response to that, Elon said last night that the problem would be fixed, that the hateful conduct label would be removed, and that sharing would once again be enabled. But he also, in a series of responses, said that the movie would be advertiser restricted, and since it's sensitive content, quote unquote, it won't be, quote, pushed to people unless they ask for it. Now, it was unclear what exactly any of that means. And at any rate, even as he said all this, the movie was at that moment being actively suppressed by Twitter. So what does advertiser restricted mean? Does it mean that advertisers control what content Twitter users can see? And if that's the case, then how can Twitter be a free speech platform if advertisers control it? And what does it mean that What is a Woman is sensitive content? How is it sensitive? Anybody who uses Twitter knows that some of the most vile, obnoxious, grotesque, actually offensive content regularly makes it into your feed from accounts you don't even follow. I have on many occasions, as we all have if you use Twitter or really any social media site, I've seen videos of people dying. Videos that pop up in my feed automatically play. I don't want to see them. And I'm just scrolling along. Next thing you know, I'm watching somebody die. And that's apparently not considered sensitive by Twitter. And of course, I see all kinds of content from the other side of the trans debate, none of which is ever labeled sensitive or hateful. Why would our film, which simply asks questions to people on both sides of the issue, be singled out in this way? And why would this happen on a platform that has newly professed its commitment to free speech? So these tweets from Elon were confusing, and the actions that Twitter was actively taking against our film were disturbing, but the picture was made more complicated by what we were hearing privately. You know, the whole Daily Wire team was at the office late last night trying to coordinate our strategy, you know, kind of a wargaming to, you know, talking about how to fight back against this censorship. And we were all getting texts and calls from sources that we know who know what's happening behind the scenes at Twitter. And word was coming in from many different places that Elon was, according to a lot of these sources, Elon was furious at his content moderation team because of this censorship, that heads were rolling at Twitter headquarters over this. It was perhaps not a coincidence that at this exact moment, a Twitter employee from the brand safety team publicly announced his resignation from the company. This employee, Mai Ayed is his name, has a history of posting tweets scolding and mocking white people, which is not exactly the sort of person who should be involved in ensuring brand safety, whatever exactly that means. But if these are the kinds of people who are leaving the company, it's probably a good sign. In the not too distant past, private citizens used to be largely that, private. What's changed? Well, the internet. Think about everything you've ever searched for, watched, or tweeted on the internet. Now imagine all that data being crawled through, collected, and aggregated by third parties into permanent public records. To keep my data private when I go online, I use ExpressVPN. There are hundreds of data brokers out there whose sole business involves buying and selling your data. They don't have to tell you who they're selling it to or get your consent. One of these data points is your IP address. Data harvesters use your IP to uniquely identify you and your physical location. But you can mask your IP address with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes my connection through an encrypted server, makes it more difficult for third parties to find me. It sounds complicated, but really you just have to open the app, tap one button on whatever device you're using, and you're good to go. If, like me, you believe that your data is your business, secure yourself with the #1 rated VPN on the market. Use my link at expressvpn.com/Matt Walsh Show to get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/Matt Walsh Show. There was no clear resolution then on the issue last night. It was kind of still up in the air. We weren't sure what was going on. But we woke up this morning, things had changed. At some point overnight, the hateful conduct flag was removed from the film and sharing and retweeting was enabled. I started getting messages from people saying that not only could they share it, but the movie was coming up in their feed. And a few hours later, as the ultimate capstone on all of this drama, Elon Musk himself shared the film from his account with a caption urging every parent to watch it. So it was a wild ride for 24 hours. It began with Twitter censoring the film and labeling it hate speech, ended with the owner of the company tweeting his endorsement of the film and urging people to watch it. So how do we make sense of this? Well, when it comes to Twitter, I think the most reasonable interpretation is that Elon Musk is still fighting with the leftist radical elements in his own company. You know, they are deeply embedded in the company, as they are in every big tech company. And given how everything worked out, it seems clear that Elon intended for the film to be distributed uncensored on the platform, but the woke elements inside the company stepped in to sabotage it. In fact, this morning, Elon confirmed that the resignations on Twitter's trust and safety team were, he said, directly related to all of this, the film, the controversy surrounding it. So, which means that on top of everything else what his woman has accomplished, it also appears to be helping to separate the wheat from the chaff over at Twitter headquarters, which is a major accomplishment in its own right. We can assume, you know, that there are likely more woke foxes in the henhouse, but the good news is that they're being rooted out, they're being exposed, which is all very encouraging. The other lesson that we learned is one that we've learned many times in the past already, which is that on this issue, and really any other issue, the left cannot win in a fair fight. They cannot meet us out on the field in a pitched battle and hope to prevail. They suppress and censor and deplatform because they know their position is insane. They know it can't be intellectually or morally defended. They know their arguments are laughable and flimsy. They know that their claims fall apart under the slightest scrutiny. Here's the truth. If open discussion on this topic of gender ideology, if open discussion was allowed everywhere, okay, if everybody could just say what they think about it, everywhere, on all the platforms, everywhere in life, you're not going to be censored, you're not going to be fired from your job, you're not going to be arrested if you live in Canada. If open conversation was simply allowed, their side would be crushed into oblivion in less than a day. Okay, it is as simple as that. Trans ideology would disappear overnight if the other side of the argument, the critical side, was allowed to speak openly and actually be heard without suppression or reprisal. The entire ideology hides behind a fortress of censorship because it is easily destroyed out in the open, and its proponents know that. That's why it would appear leftists at Twitter were willing to sacrifice their jobs for the sake of shutting this film down. They broke our agreement. They publicly defied their own boss. It's an act of self-immolation, professional self-immolation, putting their careers on the line, all in an effort to prevent people from seeing this film and hearing the other side. That's how terrified they are. And in the end, it was all for nothing. We win. You know, I will admit, and I wouldn't usually admit this kind of thing, but I will admit that throughout all of this, I did feel a bit demoralized for a time, because even though I'm used to it by now, I know how these people operate. It can still be, if you're a human being, it can still be deeply frustrating to meet these artificial roadblocks every step of the way. You know, it's one thing to have the other side arguing against us. We embrace that. We want that. But they won't argue. That's the frustrating thing. They won't argue. All they ever do is try to shut you down, silence you. They refuse to play the game on a level field. They just refuse. And after a while, the constant onslaught of censorship, suppression, demonetization, all the schemes, you know, you're always running into something else. Every day it's another thing. And it gets exhausting. With this film especially, it's been relentless. The movie's been deplatformed, banned, censored, blacklisted. Like you can't even organize a watch party for this movie on certain platforms, on Eventbrite. Like that's how thorough the deplatforming has been, and it's been that way ever since its release. Mainstream film critics refused to even review it. Okay, you remember that from last year? We sent them screeners; they wouldn't even watch the screeners. And it has reached an enormous audience in spite of all that, and had a massive impact. But in my more cynical moods, I sometimes think about how much more of an impact it might have had, how many more people it might have reached if the powers that be weren't blocking and suppressing us at every turn. Fortunately, though, as I was feeling slightly discouraged last night, I had my therapist, Jordan Peterson, on hand to offer some counsel. And he said something that put it in perspective. He said that when you speak the truth, whatever happens is the best possible thing that could have happened. And in other words, there's no use lamenting the consequences of speaking the truth, because if you do not speak it, if you remain silent, then the results will always be worse anyway, ultimately. And he's obviously right about that. In fact, proving his point, now that the censorship has been lifted and Elon has posted the film himself, it's fair to say that more people will see it and hear about it than would have if the left had never attempted to shut us down in the first place. Probably millions more. So it all backfired. The truth wins out in the end. They won't play fair. They never do. But even in the rigged game, when it comes down to it, they still lose. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.